All right. All right. I'm here with Paris Jane. How are you doing?
I am doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yes. I am a musician, visual artist, and I'm currently the curator at the Kansas African American Museum here in Wichita.
Okay.
I grew up here and lived here most of my life, left for a little bit, and came back 2 years ago. So I'm kind of rediscovering the city as
Sure.
an adult.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Awesome. I kind of have the same thing. I grew up out in Andover. My wife and I moved away when I got my first real job. We moved away to Corpus Christi for a year and then came back. So kind of the same deal. I probably wasn't as gone as long as you were, but it was kind of the same deal, rediscovering Wichita and what it looks like.
Yeah.
Um, so can you tell me a little bit about the Kansas African American Museum? I really don't know anything about that.
Oh yeah, no question. Actually, the Kansas African American Museum is downtown
Okay.
on Water Street in Wichita.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, it is right next to the county jail, which is kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But besides that, probably one of the most amazing things I found out about the museum since working there is that the church or the building that the museum is set in is an
Hmm.
old church that was built in 1917.
Oh, very cool.
And it was the second African American church built here in the city, and actually right where, the county building is,
Hmm.
and even close to like the YMCA and
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
was the first African American neighborhood here in Wichita.
Interesting. I didn't
And
know that.
so, yeah, I had no idea either until I started working there. And so everything that we do there is dedicated to the African American experience here in Wichita, both
Hmm.
historical and present.
Okay.
And yeah.
Very cool. Has COVID messed things up a little bit with attendance, or are people exploring more since they're stuck at home most of the time?
It's so interesting. We've had quite a few people come and explore. We had a lot of people come during the summertime,
Hmm.
especially because of the death of George Floyd and
Right. Yeah.
all of the different businesses kind of wanting to branch out into spaces, safe spaces where they could
Right.
discover more about, African American experience. So we had a pretty cool little uptick then, but COVID just makes it where
It's awful.
things are so difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, it ruins everything. So, where did you go, and then I guess what brought you back to Wichita?
Good question. I moved to no, I moved to Prairie View, Texas
Okay.
in 2012. I went there for college. I went to
Hmm.
Prairie View A&M University,
Very
and
cool.
it's so funny. I'm from Kansas,
Hmm.
but when I went down there, like it's like you can't help but like take a little bit of the Texas accent with you. So
Yeah.
even like people are like Prairie View, no Prairie View, like it's real
Okay.
hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's like
so
Louisville or Louisville.
yeah, exactly. So went there for 4 years, and then I actually ended up moving to Tallahassee, Florida.
Okay.
After I graduated, I started grad school.
Hmm.
I've lived like a million places. So I went from Tallahassee to grad school, found out that I did not like doing art therapy. So
Hmm.
I left. And then I moved to Austin, Texas,
Hmm.
where I stayed for about a year. And I had some family there, and I had a pretty cool experience in Austin.
Hmm.
Um, but I ended up coming back to Wichita just because number one, Austin is crazy expensive.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
um, yeah, and then number two, I really just wanted to take a moment to, after leaving school. One of the most interesting things that happens to college graduates is that they think when they leave school they're going to know exactly what they want to do with their lives,
Right.
and they don't.
Right.
And yeah, so I kind of figured, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to save some money. Let me go home for like
Yeah.
3 months and like figure it out.
Hmm.
And then my plan was to move back to Houston, and that was 2 years ago.
Yep. That's how it goes. That's how it goes.
Right. So I came back just to kind of regroup, and um yeah, I actually ended up staying for a little bit of a lot longer.
Hmm. Yeah. Have you been at the African American Museum since you came back?
No, I actually worked for the school district for
Okay.
USD 259. I
Hmm.
was a behavioral health liaison. And
Okay.
so I did behavioral health care with elementary school students and referrals. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. That's awesome. All right. So have a little bit about your background now. Um, we're here to talk about your podcast. So
Yeah.
why did you want to do a podcast? What's your podcast about?
So, interestingly enough, like that's a perfect lead in. So when I was living in Austin, I worked at this like marketing research place.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like spend like we worked a lot. So I would spend like 8 to 10 hours a day with like the same people.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of just sat at our desks and did our work and didn't really interact. And it made me always think like, who are the people that work here? Do they want to be here? Do they
Right.
not want to be here? What do they want to do? Like, it was something, a idea that just kept circulating in my head. And I kind of just let it pass and came back to Wichita. And I had even more of that feeling when I
Mm-hmm.
came back to the city.
Sure.
And the very first title I had for the podcast concept was like Unsettle Wichita. Just because I came back and I was like, everybody here seems so complacent. Like they just, go to work, go home, go out to eat, maybe go to a movie, and then do it again.
Do it all over again.
Right. And so I really wanted to dig into the stories of the people who live here.
Yeah.
And to figure out who they are, what it is that they love, who it is that keeps them rooted here.
Yeah.
And, initially my idea was to collect stories about why people didn't want to live here.
Sure. Yeah.
'Cause
There's a lot of those people. So.
Right. I was like, I don't want to be here. I want to see why everybody else, has this
Mm-hmm.
idea. Why are people leaving? And what's interesting is that in this first season of stories, I actually found out, why certain people stay
Mm-hmm.
and why certain people came back and what it is that roots them here.
Sure.
That makes them feel like this place is home to them.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's
Cool.
That's the backstory behind
Yeah,
Beyond
for sure.
Wichita.
How did you fall on the name Beyond Wichita? And that's the full name, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes. That's I love that question. At first, the title I settled on was Wichita, What's Your Story? That's like too many words.
Yeah. A little bit of a mouthful.
Right. And so I had been recording another podcast with my best friend. She used to live here and she moved to she's been in like so many cities in California, but I believe right now she's in LA, like the LA area, sorta.
Sure.
And she literally just she put like Wichita into a random like name generator online.
Yeah.
And she was like, ooh, one of them I got was Beyond Wichita. And I was like, what? She was like, Beyond Wichita. And I was like, that is dope.
I like it a lot. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I was like, that's freaking dope. I'm taking that. So
you were doing a podcast with her at the time?
Yes. So I am usually always working on at least 3 things at the same time. So we have a podcast, just kind of like a conversational podcast called Long Distance Conversations.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just because we've always lived in different cities since high school, and the way we keep up with each other is, having these really awesome conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that one hasn't come out yet.
Okay. No problem. I'm interested because not a lot of people podcast, and it can be kind of hard to get started. So it's interesting that you have another one going as well.
Yeah. No, like truly one of the biggest inspirations, and I had like the greatest pleasure to work with my favorite podcaster. Her name is Martina Abrahams Alunga.
Okay.
And she has a podcast called You Had Me at Black.
Okay. I have not heard of that.
Yeah, and that was actually the first podcast I really, really sat down and listened to. I started listening to it when I was in Austin. And I literally, when I was working one day, I wrote down the tagline for their podcast, and it's like, those who tell stories rule the world.
I like that. I like it a lot.
It's crazy. It's such a great podcast, and it's a storytelling podcast.
Yeah.
And I had the pleasure of having her help me curate and kind of pare down some of the first episodes on this first season. And so it was just amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. I guess tell me about some of the people you talked to, and how did you find them, or how did you go about that? Because there's a lot of people in Wichita. So how did you find these people?
Yeah. Some of the people I talked to were friends. Like the first episode is a story from my friend Jaden Fleming. Okay. He also goes by Flemmy or Flim. Like he has a lot of different nicknames. But he does this amazing show called After Dark.
Okay.
And we used to do it at Vorshay's, and I'd been
Oh,
singing
yeah.
with him. And so that's how I found him. And randomly one day, like, we were in rehearsal, and he starts telling this story about how when he was living in Dallas,
Mm-hmm.
he came down with like this crazy like sickness, and they couldn't figure out he couldn't figure out what it was until he went to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And so he tells that story about how he ended up getting sick and had to come back to Wichita, but made it like this amazing experience for himself because he built up so many things while he was here.
Sure.
Well, he's still here, but
Sure.
you know.
Yeah.
And so some stories kind of came like that. Others, I actually started out with like a Google form.
Uh-huh.
And I just kind of put it in a bunch of different Facebook groups here in Wichita, and
that's a great idea.
Yeah, like it was dope. And so I had people submitting stories that way.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it was a really, really cool concept. And we did that. And then some stories just came like from a friend of a friend or something, like, hey, you should talk to so-and-so, like they've had this experience here, and this might be a really dope story. So
yeah, for sure. Well, I love the Instagram, kind of the style, the colors, the pictures, the little the mixtapes that you just put out there. Like, it's a lot of really cool stuff. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Is it just you, or are you working with somebody else on this?
That's a good question. So it's a mix. As far as the story recording and editing, that is me, and that takes a million years. I actually have a sound designer who's designing like the sound and giving a soundscape to each episode, and that's my friend Marrice Anthony.
Very
He's
cool.
a musician here in the city too. And then I had two people that were working on my Instagram with me. One girl, her name is Brittany Shar, and she's so awesome. She's also doing work with an Instagram called Be Seen. Be Seen Wichita. It's run by one of my friends, and it looks so amazing. And then the person who first started doing my graphics, her name is Yadira Palacios, and she's from the North End. And so she came up with the different schemes that we have at first. The last two posts, those are mine. I also do graphic design, and so each of the story covers are my designs. So.
Okay, very cool. There's a lot going into that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
You got a lot of people to go follow on Instagram now too. That's awesome. So what's the episode format going to look like? So today is the 11th of November. You're dropping on the 18th, so a week from today. And I hope to get this out probably Monday. So a couple days before it comes out. But what can people expect? And I don't know. Tell us a little bit about that.
Ooh, that's a good question. So it's pretty much a basic storytelling format. So beginning, middle, end, kind of chronological.
Yeah.
And what you can expect to hear is that there's going to be, it almost should feel like that storyteller is telling you what happened in their story. So you won't hear me. I mean, you'll hear me at the beginning just to introduce the story, like, hey, this is Beyond Wichita, I'm Paris Jane, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But each story really is meant to take you into the moments that make up their story. And we've also paired different songs. So the mixtapes actually came out of me asking the storytellers, like, what are 3 to 5 songs that you feel characterize your story?
Sure.
And so each of those songs, me and my friend Marrice took, and we kind of broke them down and created our own kind of rendition with the same feel as some of those songs to really build up and give life to the story. Really also cool. With like some other little sounds too, but
I can't wait to hear this, because I don't know if you've listened to any of mine. That's all right if you haven't, but so I've been doing like a weekly update podcast. So it's basically a couple minutes, kind of some local highlights from stories and then upcoming events. But the bulk of my stuff is interviewing people as well. But it's like the most basic, just this interview style podcast. So, not a very little editing, add an intro, add kind of a outro, and that's about it. So I'm excited to hear like a more of a stylized, like you said, storytelling podcast. Cause just the vibe I'm getting is, I don't want to say serial because that the topics are different, but like the
But it's
feel of
real.
it,
Yeah.
like very well produced and like cool transition. Like it just sounds, I can kind of picture it or hear it in my head, but I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, like the podcast we were kind of inspired the most by were I've definitely listened to Serial. I love Serial. Like
I was late to
I'd
I just listened to
aspire
that
to
probably the last 6
become.
months, but it blew me away. So yeah, it was
Yeah,
crazy.
for sure. There's this one podcast called Mogul,
Okay.
and it's created by Gimlet Media, and
Okay.
it's like, oh
I've
my
listened to a lot of
God.
Gimlet stuff, but I haven't listened to that one. So
Yeah, it's so dope. Of course, Gimlet has like a lot of money to put
right.
into,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, but like really like the way that they make the stories is literally like if somebody's talking or telling a story about somebody like they accidentally broke the glass, like you
Right.
hear glass breaking.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's
It's so
very cool.
beautiful. I aspire to that, but ours is kind of like a beginner's.
No, that's
You
awesome
know.
though. I mean, it's a got to start somewhere. Um,
Yeah.
what's the idea behind, I guess, first of all, how long are the episodes?
So each episode ranges from about like 15 minutes to maybe like 22.
Cool. Okay.
They're they're not super like they're not like an hour, but they're not
Sure.
like
Yeah, that's
10.
good. That's a good length. Yeah.
Um,
I think a lot of
yeah,
people start to drop off if you go too much longer. I know that happens with mine. If
right.
mine are long, I can tell people are done by half an hour in, but so what's the methodology, I guess, dropping it like a full season? Is it dropping the full season next week?
No.
Okay, never mind. Okay. I
No.
misunderstood. Okay. So it's
I
first
wish.
episode.
Yeah, it's just the first episode. I really wish we could drop the full season, but I still have a couple of things to edit with some of the last episodes we got in
Mm-hmm.
interviews and everything. It takes a lot. Like some of the like raw files are like 2 hours long, and so I have to
Sure.
like cut those down to
Yeah.
15 minutes, which is crazy.
That's a lot of work. Yeah.
Right. And then also I actually have a partnership with KMUW Radio.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to ask you, I saw you had a few partnerships. So yeah, tell me about those.
Yes. So I'm actually doing a commentary for each episode with KMUW. So I needed to spread out those episodes so that I could have time to like get my episode ready and then do the commentary and let them come out, you know, together.
Oh, that'll be cool.
And
Yeah.
they're working. Yeah. They're working on a million
But you
things.
have
So
the main podcast recorded for everything already.
oh
For
yeah.
each episode. Okay.
Yeah.
I fly by the seat of my pants sometimes. Like I'll do this one. I don't really maybe have like one in the can right now, but I don't have, a lot of people will be like, I have 4 ahead of time. I'm not that organized.
Yeah.
So.
I am not. Like I had to get pushes. They were like, you need to prepare. And I was like, nah, I got it. I'm gonna drop in August. They were like, no, you're not.
Yeah. It always takes longer than you think. How many
Yeah.
episodes are there?
So right now there are 7.
Okay.
There's a possibility that there could be some bonus episodes as well, depending on just kind of permission from some of the storytellers, or whether or not we feel like some of the stories fit with this first season's theme.
Sure. Very cool. Let's see what else. Yeah. So you had a few other partners. I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but can you talk about some of those, the Knight Foundation and a few others?
Yes. So my main supporter and who kind of really helped me put this together is Harvester Arts. Kristen and Kate at the Harvester Arts. I almost said foundation. That is not what they are. But yeah, no. So they're pretty much like a placemaking nonprofit here in Wichita, and they got grant funds from the Knight Foundation and the Wichita Community Foundation. So that's where those
Very
two
cool.
go.
Okay. Yeah.
And they donated, well, not donated, but they gave grant money to three projects to kind of build up and create community or go to a cause in Wichita.
Very cool.
And so my project was selected for one of those. There's also 2 more. Like I was talking about, Be Seen was and still is, kind of like a campaign for Asian Americans to get out and vote and make their presence known here in the city and in the political arena.
Sure.
And then there's Camera for the Commons, which is led by Hugo Zalata. Zalata Ramirez, there we go. And he is actually creating like these large camera obscuras, and I think he wants to place some of them throughout the city so that people can experience their neighborhoods from a different viewpoint.
Very cool.
And,
yeah.
each of them have really awesome projects.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to have to get, all these names from you. There's been a lot of name drops of
Yeah.
people and things and projects that I would love to help share and get more audiences to.
Yeah.
Let's see. What have you learned through making a podcast? What advice would you give to somebody else that would want to make a podcast?
For sure, I think that you could probably attest to this in creating a podcast. The first set of advice I'd give is don't be afraid to just let it flow, you know? Like we all start with like, my podcast is going to be this, and this is the only thing it's going to be, and this is how I want it to look, or I don't want it kind of attitude. Sometimes we get so married to the first idea.
Right.
And sometimes you just have to let that flow happen and see what works, see what doesn't, and like just kind of like execute your ideas so you can see what they look like. That's something that kind of stifled me at the beginning. I was like, I don't know how to do this. So
I know. Yeah. There's definitely a learning curve for that. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Something I was interested in. So this was a Wichita specific podcast, but the naming convention kind of leads it to, it could be Beyond Austin or anything like that. Have you thought anything down that road?
Yes, I'm so glad that conveys. What I originally thought for like long-term plan is I wanted to start in Wichita because there's this idea that if you come from a place like Wichita, the only cool people you can find don't live here. They like, when I was growing up anyway, I grew up in the, I was in my teenage years in the early to late 2000s. And I looked to YouTube to find people like me. Sure. And I didn't feel like I could find those people in my city. So I wanted to start in Wichita and show that like in lesser known cities, there are people that are like you, or people that have, struggles or stories. Sure. And so I came up with, it was Beyond Wichita at first. And I was like, but let me make this umbrella like beyond our city, because
I love that.
Maybe I could move to different cities, not move literally, but find people in different cities. I have a friend who lives in Hearn, Texas. Okay. Nobody has heard of Hearn, Texas.
Have not.
And he hates it there. But it made me think, like he's such an awesome person and he lives there. There must be people like that who have stories that need to be heard,
Yeah, 100%. For sure. Has just recording and producing and all this stuff, has it been a struggle with COVID? Like some people don't want to meet up in person or anything like that?
Yeah, recording actually hasn't been difficult. I have been using this website called Zencastr. Yeah. And it is so dope.
Okay, I haven't tried it yet. I've just been using Zoom because it's easy, but I might have to try Zen. Yeah. I've heard other people talk about Zencastr.
Yeah, Zencastr is dope. Like, how like we might talk over each other and you just have one wave file. Like it can give you, for each person in the call, it'll give you 2 waves.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Sure. That's awesome.
That part's been good. As far as finding stories, when I first started, I started actually last October 2019. Wow, yeah. And I was able to find a lot of people, and just like, I'd be like I remember I was getting like my car worked on and I started talking to this lady in there and I was like, hey, I'm doing a podcast. Do you want to like, and she was like, yeah. And then when COVID happened, I could not find people to tell stories. Like it's such a hard concept to explain. So
yeah, it is.
It's easier in person than like online or in a post. And so that was the hardest thing, just trying to find storytellers and get the word out. But I think as people have adjusted to being more technologically engaged, it's been a lot easier throughout the year.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have a plan? I guess KMU probably could help you with some of this, but like advertising or marketing the podcast, just because it's hard when people don't even know you're there. I've still experienced that, and I've been doing it for 2.5 years. So do you have a plan for that?
Oh, that's right now my only plan is like Facebook ads.
No, Facebook ads are great. I've tried a couple times and I probably need to just figure out how it works a little better, but that's a great way to do it. But
yeah, like definitely that's one of the things that like makes me nervous. Like I love everything else, even the editing, the advertising and the marketing is so difficult. I think one of the things though, And like reaching out to you
Sure.
is to kind of expand, like find people in Wichita and in surrounding cities like Kansas City and different places, and kind of just create a network of people who do podcasts, who have people who listen, and just expand that for each other. So not just like me being, hey, you know, send your followers to my stuff. It's like, no, let's build this
it's mutual.
up.
For sure. It's funny you say that, because I was just on another podcast here in Wichita called the ICT Podcast. And so Brandon Paulsine is the guy that runs it. But so when I was originally trying to figure out if I wanted to do this Wichita Life podcast, I was like, okay, what other Wichita centric or based podcasts are there? And so I was looking, and there was a couple that like hadn't posted in 2 years or something. And then there was the ICT podcast, which hadn't posted in a little while, or had just posted one for the first time in a while. I'm like, okay, whatever. My method's different. Everyone does it differently. And so like when I first started, my mindset's almost like, oh man, it's a competitor. But then it's like, you get to know these people, and it's like, we can build each other up. And so it was cool to finally sit down with him and talk about that. And he said the same thing. He's like, we're all trying to build each other up. It's all about Wichita. It's like, even if we had all the time in the world, we're not going to get to every story in Wichita. So it's cool that we have so many different perspectives and styles of podcasts. Hello?
Okay. My bad.
No, you're good.
That sucks so much. My phone died in the middle of it, so I was like,
no, you're good. Anyways, I was just, again, kind of talking more about how the different podcasts can help build each other up. But I had just been on another one. So anyways, I'll recommend you to him as well, because that would be a great avenue for you to kind of cross promote and talk a little bit more about Beyond Wichita.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually got in touch with a couple of different podcasts. There's a podcast called Queen X Podcast.
Okay.
And it's run by this wonderful lady named Autumn Black.
Okay.
And she actually used to live here. Her and her husband had a store that they ran here, and they actually ended up moving.
Okay.
And so their podcast has expanded from like Wichita to like the Dallas-Fort Worth area and other places. And so it just makes that spectrum wider. And then same thing, like you were saying, you know, you're kind of like, oh crap, like maybe I shouldn't do this because there's this other podcast. Yeah. There's a podcast that I found called City Voices.
Okay.
And I remember when I found it, I was talking to my boyfriend and I just cried. I was like, no,
right.
They have the same concept. Like I just shouldn't do it. But I ended up talking to the guy who ran it. And like it's a little bit similar, but it's different. And yeah, there's a good market, like a good network.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's just cool to hear about it's awesome to hear about your story, and it's awesome to hear about their story. And it's really cool. Do you have anything else you'd like to cover with the podcast?
Okay.
You there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I don't know what happened. Yeah.
All right, we're good. Is there anything else you'd like to cover with the podcast?
I don't know. I think we got to the heart of it. I really do though. I hope that people listen to it to kind of connect with other people's experiences here in the city. Mm-hmm. I think that each story is so different. One thing that I wanted to do with this season specifically, since it's the first one, is mm-hmm. to find people that live in the different parts of Wichita.
Yeah,
like, you definitely. Know, if you grow up here, you know that like, if you live on the west side, you never really go to the east side. If you live on the east side,
I'm an east sider. I don't go anywhere else really. So
right. Yeah. And so like, it can be so easy to get caught up in your neighborhood.
Yep.
And to get like, side in a way and never really find people from different places here. Right. Even though it's only like 12 minutes.
I know away. I was just talking to somebody else. Yeah. Oh, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, I was
My
just
bad,
telling
go
somebody
ahead.
else, it's like, that's one thing I love about Wichita. I was like, you can get to the other side of town in 15 minutes, but I never go to the other side of town. So,
Right. And what's funny enough, I grew up on the northeast side. So
okay,
like, but now I live all the way out west. Because I moved out here for my first job when I was working at the elementary school.
sure.
And like this is the most I've ever traveled throughout Wichita.
Right.
And like it's like when you leave and you come back, you learn like I can explore more places than just where I live.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so I just want to encourage people to do that and learn about the people that live around them and really make our city a place that they want to be, even if it's not a place they want to be forever.
Yep. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I think that's a good stopping point for that. I have a few questions that I kind of ask everybody that I've cherry picked from other podcasts I like and that kind of thing. So we'll hop into
Yes.
that. So, what is something you often recommend to people, whether it's like a book or podcast or movies or anything like that? You mentioned a couple podcasts, but
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I love music with like all of my heart.
mhm,
So I'm gonna recommend an album.
okay.
Um, ooh, why did I do that? Because now this is hard. Oh, let's do this. So can I recommend two
Yeah,
things?
anything you want. Yeah.
Okay, dope. So my sound engineer, Marrice Anthony, has an album out called Nimbus 3.
Okay.
And that album is really, really cool. Especially like there's this one song on there called 26, and
Okay.
he does a song every year for his birthday,
Oh, very cool.
for his 26th birthday. And myself and a bunch of our other friends are like almost like a choir, like on
Oh,
that
very
song.
cool. Yeah.
And it's so dope. And then also a really awesome album by an artist here. His name is Blake Warrior.
Okay.
And his album is called Table for Two. A lot of people have heard it, but a lot more people need to hear it. And
I
it's
haven't heard it, so I'm excited to check it out. Yeah.
yes, it's really good. He's
Very
really
cool.
dope.
Awesome. I will check all that out, and I'll link up everything you've mentioned. I'm gonna have to listen back through and write everything down,
Right.
but list everything you mentioned. It's a lot of good stuff. Um, do you have a favorite failure in your life? Any aspect of your life?
Ooh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. So oh gosh. When I think about this story, it's funny now, but then it was like not.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, growing up I had like this track, like I was gonna be a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to college, it's like, I'm going to be an art therapist. And I think one of the greatest failures I've ever had in my whole life was going to grad school and realizing like everything that I built up is not what it should be.
Right.
And more than that, like I kind of fell into like this whole depression and everything. And like I ended up like literally packing up my car and like within 2 days of the first semester ending, packed up my car and left Florida and just drove and just stopped in different places that I knew I wanted to be. Like I stopped in Houston, said hey, stopped in Austin, said
Mm-hmm.
hey, came back to Wichita, said hey. And it felt so bad to me because I was like, what am I going to do now?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
but it ended up being the thing that drove like a lot of the projects that I have now and a lot of the passions that I kind of rediscovered.
Sure.
So yeah.
Very cool. Random thought I just had. Do you have any albums out?
Oh wow. Yeah, I do. That's crazy that I forgot about that. Yes. So I have an EP called Make Believe.
Okay.
Um, it is on Apple Music, Spotify, maybe SoundCloud. It's on YouTube. It's
Okay.
like a
Yeah.
lot of places.
Cool.
And it's only like 3 songs, but they're like a mix of songs. One song I wrote in 2017, one song I wrote, earlier this year. So
Very cool. Yeah, I'll
it's
check that out for sure.
yeah.
What is your definition of success? That's always the bomb I drop on people.
This is like, why should you work for us? No, oh man, my definition of success would be, ooh, hmm, that's a beautiful question. I think for myself, I think that if you are doing work that you can give all of yourself to throughout the day, and at the end of the day, you still have enough left, like you still feel like you have life in you. And, most days won't be like that, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you feel like you've given all you had, you feel relieved, and you still have more to go. Like, I think that that's the definition of success. Like, there's always something new, something beautiful to build upon. And, you know, your energy just kind of keeps on building on itself and growing and going and branching out, because sometimes
Yeah.
we work places and it like sucks the energy out of us,
Yeah,
or we do
absolutely. Yeah.
things. Yeah. And it just drains us. And I think being successful is feeling like you've given everything and being fulfilled with that.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. I love that.
lofty.
Yeah, I love that. That was great. Especially when I put you on the spot like that. So, do you have a life motto you live by, or what is some of the best advice you've received?
Oh gosh, these are good. This is hard. These are great. Man, man. Ooh, that's great. I think so. Hopefully, this is not polarizing. But for me, there's a scripture in the Bible in Ecclesiastes.
Hmm.
When I was living in Austin, I was like super, super, super depressed, and luckily
Hmm.
my family there were like really into church and fed me a lot of good things. And for me, it was good. It might not be the best for other people, but yeah.
Sure.
So in Ecclesiastes, there's a scripture. I don't know it word for word, but it's basically like, don't long for or don't look to the past,
Hmm.
and feel like the present isn't good enough,
Hmm.
because what was meant for that time was meant for then, and what you're going through now is meant for now.
Oh, I
And
love that.
so,
Yeah,
and
that's
that,
great.
yeah, that's something that I always try to live by, especially if I'm having a day where I'm like, oh, this sucks, everything is
Right.
terrible, I want to go back to college, it was so fun. Like, it kind of reminds me that was for then and this is for now, and this place that I'm at right now might be a place where I'm building up like this grand house,
Right.
and that foundation isn't as high as the third floor might be.
Sure.
So yeah.
No, that's great. That's very good. Last question before we jump into just a couple Wichita kind of rapid fire ones, but what is a
Cool.
habit that you've developed over the past few years that's most improved your life?
Ooh, ooh, I love I have like, it's like a two-parter. So the
Okay.
first one is every day when I wake up, I drink 2 full glasses of water.
Okay.
And that's like super simple, but like it just like wakes me up and it makes me feel like a productive like adult.
Yeah.
That
Better than caffeine straight to the veins with some coffee or something.
right, right. That and hmm one thing that I learned how to do when I was in college at some point, I think, is that if I was ever like distracted,
Hmm.
especially if I was sitting somewhere, I would just stop and like write down what was in my head. Like whatever was distracting me from
Mm.
focusing, I would stop and just like literally like word vomit and just do a stream of consciousness on the
Yeah.
paper and get it out, and then I could just keep going. Like, it was good.
Interesting. Yeah. I will have to try that. Do you journal other than that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like sometimes I do theme journals. This past month I did like a gratitude journal,
Yeah.
but I found like cool questions, not like name 3 things you're grateful for. Like,
Right.
that isn't
That's what
so.
pops in my head when I think of that. So
No, like, like name a person that makes you feel safe, or like something
sure.
cool that's
That
not
is
like,
cool. And you came up with all
yeah.
that?
No, no, I
Oh,
found
okay.
that
I was gonna say
online.
that's even more impressive. That's really cool
No.
though. Um, all right. So just a couple Wichita questions. So what is your favorite part of Wichita, or what's a hidden gem in Wichita that people might not know about?
Here we go. Yes. Ooh, that's a great question. Oh gosh, a hidden gem in Wichita. Probably, probably the library.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd, so Like every place I've ever been, I've always had a library card
Yeah.
because I just love being there. I actually ended up being like friends with with a curator in Austin,
Yeah.
just because I ended up at the library. And I think that there's always just like cool stuff you can find there. But here, like our library is dope, and I don't know
It's
why
super
people.
cool.
It's so nice, like all those windows. That's like, yeah, that's
Yeah,
a
it's
hidden gem.
beautiful. It's functional. I've recorded several podcasts there. Just rent one of the little
Yeah,
conference rooms. They have the little AV room if you didn't have any equipment. It's really cool.
exact. Like that place is. I love that place.
Yeah, it's really cool. Is there anything you wish Wichita had that it doesn't, or what would you improve about Wichita?
Ooh, yes. Yes, I love this question. This is like my next season.
Oh, perfect.
this
Even better.
this is our this is our topic. Um One thing that I wish Wichita had that it does not have, I think that there should be hmm that's such a good question. So for me, I think that if there were more open spaces in
Mm,
different parts of the city.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
if we have downtown, we have Old Town, we have the new I never say this right, Nafsker.
Nafsker, yeah. Hmm?
Yeah, Nafsker Park. That place is dope. We have Wave and stuff like places where people
Mm-hmm.
can like create things.
Yeah,
We have a lot of those downtown, but unfortunately, like everybody doesn't feel welcome downtown sometimes.
sure.
And I know from like my neighborhood that was one of the things. And if I feel like if the city invested in making sure there are places in different parts of the city, like it would make the city so much more fluid.
Yeah,
There would be
yeah,
a
yeah.
reason to go into different parts and learn about different people, and it would inspire like the cultures to be more bold and poignant in the different places. Like
No, that's a
that
great
would,
idea. Yeah, I like that a lot. I haven't heard that one yet. Most of the time, people just say the Cheesecake Factory. So
I have never been to
I've only
the
been like
Cheesecake
once. It's good, but yeah, people love that place. It's probably like half my episodes. That's people's answers. So
That's crazy.
I like yours better though. So,
Thank
um,
you.
I guess real quick before the last question, you said you asked people for their mixtape for like 3 or 5 songs that kind of relate to their
Yeah.
story or that kind of thing. What are 1 or 2 of your songs that you'd put on that?
Oh, yes.
Or more if you have more off the top of your head, but
Oh no, it's probably only like 3. For sure. Let's see. The first song would be a song by Kid Cudi because that was like my favorite person in high school and like still to this day. What song by him would I choose? Man on the Moon.
yeah.
Man on the Moon by Kid Cudi, for sure. The second song would be probably, oh, this is hard. The song that pops in my head immediately is Bring the Ruckus by Wu-Tang.
All right. Yeah.
Um, and ooh, The Less I Know the Better by Tame Impala.
Okay. I don't know
Yeah,
that one. So
that's it's a dope song.
I'll
Yeah.
look it up. Yeah, for sure. All right. So last question. What does Wichita mean to you?
I love so one of the things that I always say or that has kind of become like a sub tagline for my podcast, is that like Wichita is a place that like aside from like larger cities, like you know how they say in New York, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Like
Mm,
that city kind of shapes you and molds you.
yeah.
I think that Wichita is the opposite. Wichita is a place where you can shape the city. There's so many different things that haven't been done here or that have been kind of like made small. And even though that's not like the best thing in the world, it makes space for us as the people that live here
Yeah.
to really mold the city into what we want it to be, as long as we're willing to give that to the city. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I haven't heard it described like that. I really like that. That's a great tagline too. You should definitely use that if you're not. So,
Yes.
okay. So Paris, thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun. Where can people find you or the podcast, that kind of thing?
Yes. So you can find me on any platform on like I think my handle on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Tumblr, YouTube is the Paris Jane. So
Yeah,
THE Paris Jane.
perfect.
That's me everywhere. You can also find my podcast Beyond Wichita at beyondourcity.com. That's
Hmm.
beyondourcity.com. And the same handle on Instagram, Beyond Our City. There, same thing on Facebook. I think it either might be Beyond Our City or Beyond Wichita, but either way, you can find us there.
Perfect. Yeah, I will
Yeah.
link all that up. Again, thank you again. This was a lot of fun. Let me know,
Yeah.
I guess, next Wednesday, and I'll help promote your stuff, and hopefully we can see that grow. It's really cool. I'm excited to hear it.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
See ya.